Hello, Sage Naldo here, and today I wanted to provide you some gameplay of my Nico Robin decklist for OP-15. For this video, I'm only focusing on gameplay because I have already made a video on the full decklist and breakdown of the deck, and I will be putting that video on the description of this one and also here on the top of the screen. However, I will also be providing a few changes that you can make to this list at the end of the video if you're interested in a different playstyle or just wanting other options that are available for this deck as well. Before getting into the video, please consider liking and subscribing as it really helps out the channel. Now without further ado, let's get into the matches that I have for today. To start off, we have Red Yellow Bonney from EBO4. Now this match can be a bit tricky considering that they can get to 9k in power with the leader effect and also the 10 drop Luffy. So we go ahead and we play out the 2-cost Nami so we can find their pieces. Since we went second, ideally we want to find our 7 drops, being the 7-cost Robin from EBO3 or the 7-cost Robin from OP-15. However, we just find the 5-cost Luffy, which is pretty good considering that this Bonney runs a lot of blockers, so we're able to use his effect to increase the attack while he is attacking. Now, we go ahead and take the first hit since our opponent swings an AK to lead, and we trigger Nico Ovia just because we are looking for some of the pieces that we want for the following turns. We go ahead and we already have one 7-cost Robin, and we also find the 10-cost Luffy. That is going to be very important considering that this Bonney also plays that 10-cost Luffy. We're able to swing into it without being able to attach a lot of dawn to our character or just be able to combat the 9k leader that Bonney is going to be becoming later on in the game. So we swing 9k to leader, which the opponent takes. We are able to banish one of their lives already, but our opponent has a pretty big hand size at this time, and they are using the leader effect to take 1 life. So here, since they are at 2, they can just play out a 5-cost Borsalino to heal that life back, essentially cycling a bit their hand, looking for anything that they might need later on. So they swing 5k into our leader, and we just go ahead and take it, and they play out the Borsalino and heal back. So currently they have 1 blocker and 3 life while also having 7 cards in hand. So we just go ahead and play out the 7-cost Nico Robin from OP-14. Considering that we are still at 2 life and we can be a little bit more aggro here, so we play the 5-cost Rush Luffy so we can keep on swinging into our opponent's life. And if they use the Borsalino blocker, we're able to use the Luffy effect to increase the attack of the Luffy depending on what card we're able to reveal. However, in this time I didn't swing with the Luffy considering that I want to keep pressure at the life while banishing, and I want them to swing at my life instead of my board. However, unfortunately they go ahead and play out a Zeus to take 1 life while KOing a 5-cost character, which in this case they're able to KO my Luffy. So they use the leader effect to take another life, dropping to 1 life. So now on my turn they're going to be becoming a 7k leader unless they go ahead and play out something like another Borsalino to heal back, and they go ahead and swing with the Borsalino they already have on board, which makes me think that they're going to be playing another Borsalino to heal and also have another blocker on the board, which is exactly what they do. So now we just go ahead and drop to 1 life because we have multiple options to heal, and we go ahead and swing 8,000 into Borsalino to get rid of it, considering that we no longer have to worry about requests or triggers. They can have that Borsalino on the trash. I swing here 6,000 to leader to play around the blocker Borsalino. They just go ahead and give me a 2k, and I play out the 7-cost Robin from OP-14 along with the 4-drop Zoro from the same set, so I can go ahead and heal while also establishing a pretty big board so I can put more pressure down the line. After healing, I just go ahead and pass, and the opponent goes ahead and uses the leader effect to minus the 7-cost Nico Robin that I have rested, Currently, they have 9 dons, so they're able to play out the 10 cost Luffy for 9 dons since they are at 1 life or less, making the leader of 7k leader. And the 10 cost Luffy becomes a blocker this turn as well. So they go ahead and attack the 7 cost Nico Robin that I currently have rested, and power has been reduced by 1000, so it's currently at 6k body. And I am debating as to countering the second swing. However, I don't want to get rid of the Borsalino that I have, since it's going to be very optimal later on. So keep on healing and going back and forth with protecting my board, considering that our opponent is going to be playing a lot of big bodies that are going to be swinging at life later on. So I just go ahead and play out the Luffy that the opponent already has as well. However, unfortunately, since I have 2 life, I can't play it for 9 Dawn, and instead I play it for all 10. However, I do get that blocker on the board, which is pretty good considering that I am going to be receiving a 12k swing next turn from the opponent's 10 cost Luffy. And I don't swing with the other characters that I have on the board, considering that the opponent had a pretty large blocker. And also I don't want to have the opponent swing into my board either, since I have a lot of options to heal. I can make them focus on my life instead of my board, since I can heal back later on and still keep my board to pressure their life as well. So the opponent goes ahead and swings 9k into life, which I take. I get a Frankie from life. However, since I don't have many 2ks or counter in my hand, I opt to not trigger it to keep it in my hand. And since the opponent is going to be a 7k leader anyways, it's going to be tough to be able to swing with it to the leader, so it is much better to just keep it in hand as a counter. The opponent goes ahead and plays 2 blockers, and it is going to be very difficult to push through, considering that these blockers are very cheap, so they can establish multiple of them at the same time. And also, on KO, the Centomaro is going to be able to draw a card, essentially making one of the swings nullified with a cheap blocker. So I just go ahead and swing 7 into the leader with my leader. Since it has the banish, we're able to just get the blocker out of the way and keep on swinging 7s into our opponent's life, so that we can keep poking and get some cards out of their hand. And then we can just go ahead and play a body that is going to be able to heal us. The opponent just goes ahead and uses a counter to counter out of the 7k while also reducing the Zoro, so we're unable to swing with it currently unless we attach multiple Dawn into it. So I just avoid swinging with it so I can play something that I am able to heal with, while also keeping Dawn up for the Gum Gum Giants that I have in my hand, while also avoiding that they swing into the Zoro as well. So I just go ahead and play out the Borsalino and heal, and then just go ahead and pass, since I have the multiple Gum Gum Giants in hand and also the Gum Gum Rifle. I can use these to counter out in case that you just go for game and get rid of the Borsalino by any chance. However, I am most likely just taking some of these lives so I can find other options to heal instead of playing out the Robin. Since the Robin is a 7 cost character, it is a bit expensive to play her out just to heal. So ideally, I'm looking to get other Borsalino so I can focus on attacking our opponent as well. Currently, our opponent is debating as to what to play out. They are currently at 0 life. So playing out another Luffy is not very ideal, considering that they will not be able to heal, even if they get to 9k. However, they just first start with a 12k swing into our 7k Nico Robin, which is pretty good, so they can try to remove a base 7k body, considering that if they don't play a 10 cost Luffy, she is able to attack the leader without having to invest on. However, I am considering just trying to save this Nico Robin so I can keep my board established. However, I just give the Borsalino blocker at this time, considering that they might be able to get rid of it by KOing it. However, they use the Kingdom Come to remove my 10 cost Luffy, which is very unfortunate, considering that they themselves have a 10 cost Luffy on the board, and they still have 4 Dawn, that they're able to use to swing into my characters. They use the leader effect to -1 and swing 6 into the Nico Robin. However, I just go ahead and counter, and they play 2 additional blockers that it is going to be very difficult to get by, considering that I don't have any characters or events that are able to either rest or KO these small blockers that they are playing out. So I just go ahead and proceed with the option of just poking at the at the opponent's hand. Since they only have 4 cards in their hand, they are most likely going to try and counter the small swings while leaving the small blockers up in case I do any bigger swings later on during the turn. They use another event to minus the Zoro, so I may not be able to swing with it, considering that the best option right now to heal is the 7-cost Nico Robin. However, if I just leave the Zoro standing, it is less likely of them to try to KO the whole board. So I just go ahead and pass, leave 1 up for the Gum Giant to defend the Nico Robin that I have rested. And since I have played out the other Nico Robin, it is going to be difficult for them to get rid of this body, considering that they are at 0 life. If they KO it, they will just lose the match right here. So they go ahead and use the leader effect to reduce the 7-cost Nico Robin that I have rested while playing the Jewelry Bonney Searcher. That lets them search for an Egghead or Straw Hat Pirate type card out of the top 4 cards out of their deck. They're currently debating as to what to get. So they can get a few options right now. Since they are at 0 life, they can play out a 10-cost Luffy or play out the 7-drop Zoro to make their leader a 9k leader for my turn as well. However, they just go ahead and pick out the EBO3 Nami. This allows them to force me to pick up a life since I have 3 currently. However, they first swing 8,000 into my reduced Nico Robin. Here I am debating if I should counter out or not, considering that they have the 12k swing from the Luffy still, and they also have 6 Dawn that are currently open. However, since I am looking for other cards to play next turn and I have 2 Giants in my hand, I just go ahead and counter so that I can find other characters, for example the Borsalino that I just got. So if they swing into my life or play out that Nami, I am able to heal. However, they just go ahead and play out a Borsalino to heal while also having a blocker, which is pretty good considering that they now have 3 blockers and a life as well. So we draw into the 5-cost Luffy that, considering the amount of blockers that they have, is a pretty good option to play out, since whenever our opponent blocks, the Luffy is going to be increasing the amount of power based on the life that I have on the top currently. And it is a good option to force our opponent to not block and just give out more cards from their hand as well. So we swing 7 and we get that Nami that they had searched previously. I go ahead and debate if swinging with the Nico Robin or the Zoro first. But I do swing with the Nico Robin so that they can give out a 2k, give us a life, or block so that we can increase the power of the 5-cost Luffy that currently has rush and has yet to attack. Since they gave us a 2k, we just go ahead and swing another 7 and they give us the life. And now swinging with the Luffy another 7k, they're just able to block. Considering that it is our final swing, they're able to give out one of the 1-cost blockers that they have without having to sacrifice too much right now. The opponent just goes ahead and gives us another 1k counter, which is pretty good considering that they only have 2 cards in their hand currently, despite them having 3 blockers on the board. It allows us to get rid of the cards and get rid of some of the options that they might have for the following turns, for example healing or playing out one of those 5-cost Namis to force us to take a life since we're still at 3 life at the time. Now I do have 2 active Dawn for the Gum Giant and Gum Rifle that I have in my hand. So in case the opponent tries to go for game, we are pretty much set here. We are in no danger of losing. However, we could be losing some of the characters that we have on the board. They go ahead and swing 9k into the Zoro that was reduced by the leader effect, so 9,000 into 5. And then just go ahead and swing 17 into our 7k Luffy, which is a pretty big number. So since I don't want to get rid of the whole hand that I currently have, I just let it go. And we draw into a 6 cost Banished Zoro. And since I am unable to heal with the Borsalino and I don't want to trash a card from my hand to heal with the 4 cost Zoro, I start off with an AK swing from the Nico Robin into the opponent to see if they would give me another card or just give me one of the blockers that they have. And I swing another 7k with the leader, and I have some done options to play out the 6 cost Zoro, and the opponent just goes ahead and uses Blade Slice to make themselves an AK lead for the turn. However, they don't rest anything since I am not at 2 life or less, so I just play out the Zoro and pass to have more options to attack the following turns. Now again, since the opponent is still at 0 life, they're pretty much unable to KO the Nico Robin that we currently have rested. That means that the opponent will most likely be attacking my life this turn. And since I have the 5 cost Borsalino, I will be able to heal while also establishing a blocker, which is pretty good for the following turns. While I also keep attacking our opponent's life with the 2 characters that I already have on the board. The opponent just goes ahead and gives a 5k swing into my leader, which I'm debating countering since the opponent has a 12k body on the board and they can just play out something like Kid to keep on trashing life, or Nami, so that forces me to take a life as well. So I give the 2k counter, and then the opponent swings a 7k into leader with the Borsalino. So I am here debating as to taking the life or countering. However, I do decide to take the life to force the opponent to just try to kind of go for game, or keep swinging at my life and kind of ignoring the board if they might have something that could maybe KO one of the characters that I currently have. They play out the 9 cost Bonney, which is a pretty good option considering that I am currently at 2 life. The Bonney forces me to take 1, and then they can swing 10k with the Bonney since it has rush, and follow up with a 12k swing with the 10 cost Luffy that they already have. Now currently I just go ahead and I counter out of the 10k to keep some of the cards in my hand, and then the opponent just swings 12k into the Nico Robin since he already knows that he won't be able to get the match, and I just use the effect to win the game. And this is pretty much for the red yellow Bonney matchup. Let's get into the next match. Now let's get into a match against Black Crocodile. And in this match, I opted to go second just because that is the curve that I have built this deck for. And also Croc wants to go second as well, considering that they can play out the 8 cost Croc on curve. And since we have the 2 cost Nami, we just go ahead and keep this hand since we're able to search for whatever we want. And we find both a 7 cost Nico Robins. Now, since I already have the 5 cost Luffy in hand, I opt for the Sky Island Nico Robin, just because in this match, whenever they get out the 8 cost Crocs, they're going to start stunning everything on our boards. So I want the option to go wide, and they go ahead and swing 7 into our leader, and we just take it, and we get the 4 cost Zoro. So now we have options to either play out the Zoro or the Luffy from the Nico Robin effect. Now we draw into the 10 cost Luffy, and I just go ahead and swing 5k into the leader just because I want to get rid of some of the cards from their hand. And also I'm able to play out the 4 cost Zoro right now and heal while establishing a body that is going to help me keep on poking the opponent's hands to get rid of some of the cards that they have. Now I just go ahead and trash the 6 cost Nico Robin, as next turn I'm going to be playing the 7 drop and won't really have a good option to play the 6 cost right now. So I just pitch it, and if we get another one later on, we can just play it out again. The opponent uses the leader effect to get rid of the Miss Golden Week and minuses the 4 cost 0 to 0. And now they're able to play out Mr. Wanda's bones to rest and swing. However, they just go ahead and swing 9k into our leader, which is pretty good for us since we don't have to counter out of a swing into our Zoro. And we go ahead and play out the 7-drop Robin to play out the 5-drop Luffy. And now we have 3 swings for this turn. So we just go ahead and swing 5 with our leader. They counter out with a 2k. So we just go ahead and swing 6 with the Zoro and follow up with a 7 with the 5 cost Luffy. Now our opponent is at 3 life, and next turn we can just go ahead and play out the 7 cost Robin or the 6 cost Zoro to have more banish options. The opponent plays out the 7 cost Miss Sunday and then swings 5k with leader, which we just take. Now our opponent played out 1 blocker that is just going to be able to allow him to take a card from the trash whenever it gets KO'd. So here I'm debating how much I'm actually going to swing with the leader, considering that in any case it's going to be blocked by this blocker right here. So we start off with a 6k with the Zoro, and they take it, and then we swing a 7k with the Nico Robin just to see if the opponent is going to block, give us a counter, or even take another life. However, they just go ahead and give out a 2k 1k right here with the Das Bones and Golden Week. So we just go ahead and swing another 7k with the leader. However, since this is a banished swing, they just go ahead and block, and now they are able to take a card from the trash, which they take the Golden Week, which is a 2k. So they are essentially looking for counter. They may not have a lot of counter in their hand, so we test the waters with an 8k with the Luffy, and then we are considering playing out the 7 cost Robin or the 6 cost Zoro. However, I go ahead with playing out the Zoro since I have 7 Dawn at the time, and I want to be able to have 1 active Dawn for the Gum Giant. So I just go ahead and pass with the active Dawn in case they try to remove most of the characters on my board during this turn. However, I expect that they're going to be playing the 8 cost Croc. So they swing 8,000 into our 6,000 Zoro, and I am debating to counter with the Gum Giant because they're probably swinging 6k at most with the leader, considering that they are going to play the 8 cost Croc. So now they're going to stun the 5 cost Luffy and now use the leader effect to KO the Crocodile and -1 of my characters. They go ahead and minus the Robin to play back the Crocodile and stun it. However, they opted to stun the Zoro instead. So for next turn, I'll still have the banished Zoro to be able to attack. And the leader goes ahead and with a 5k swing into my leader, which I just go ahead and counter since it is just a 1k counter. And I will most likely play out the 7-drop Robin next turn to be able to heal. And I have 3 attacks right now. The opponent has 1 active Dawn, most likely for ground death. And I go ahead and swing a 6k with the leader since it is a banished swing, expecting them to give me the 2k that they picked up earlier with the blocker, which is exactly what they do. Then I go ahead and swing 7k with the banished Zoro to get the counter event from their hand. However, they give me a 2k and a 1k, which is a lot better for me. I go ahead with another 7k swing to see if they still counter out or take the last life, since I am planning on playing the 7-drop Robin and keeping 1 up for the Giant. Since they use an event, I am able to increase the power of the Luffy. However, I don't do it in this case because I am not going to be able to attack with it. So I just play the Robin and pass with 1 active for the Gum Giant. Now the opponent only has 5 cards in hand, although they have 1 life, and they have the Crocodile and also the Sunday that are going to be big swings. And we don't really have that much counter in hand. We only have 2 2Ks and the Giant. So I give the 2 2Ks. However, in hand tied, I should have just given the Giant so that I can counter more flexible in the upcoming swings. However, I gave the 2 2Ks that I had in the hand. The opponent uses the leader effect to KO the Crocodile and minus the banished Zoro. And they play out the Crocodile again. And they are debating what they're banishing. Stunning. They stun the 7-cost Robin. I assume that they are trying to look for another Crocodile to keep stunning my board. So they go for the AK swing into the Robin, and unfortunately I have to give out the Giant. This is a misplay on my part, since I should have given the Giant in the earlier swing and just preserve the 2-2Ks that I had. However, I get out of the AK swing into the 7-cost Robin, and we draw into another 2K, which is pretty good for us. The opponent plays out another 8-cost Croc, so they are able to stun the 5-cost Luffy again. Now the opponent swings 5k into our leader, leaving 2 active Dawn, maybe for 2 ground death. We do get a 2k Frankie from the life, however we don't trigger it since we are trying to maintain the 2ks in our hand. We go ahead and draw a 5-cost Borsalino, which is pretty good for us considering that we are currently at 2 life. And since we have the 7-cost Robin and the 5-cost Luffy stunned, I just go ahead and swing a 9k with the banished Zoro to see if they give us the ground death plus an additional card, which they do give us a ground death. I don't really use the Luffy effect because it can swing anyway, so it really doesn't matter. And they are currently at 3 cards in hand, 1 life. I'm here testing out what I can do if I should just try to go for game or play it safe, playing out the 5-cost Borsalino. But I just go ahead and swing another 9 since they would have to give me 2 cards if they do have the ground death, and they don't have it, so they just take the life. And I swing another 9k and leave 1 Dawn for a 7k with the Zoro, and they unfortunately don't have the counter, and we get the game. Before getting into the next match, I want to go over some changes that I made to the deck. I took out the 6-cost Nico Robin and replaced it with the 6-cost Silver Rayleigh. This is from a recommendation that I saw in my last YouTube video. Someone left a comment regarding the change that I was pretty good into Green Purple Luffy. So I wanted to test it out, and I was also thinking about adding this card just because of the Cavendish into the Lucy matchup as well. And here is testing this version of the deck going against OP-15 Bell Luffy. Going against Bell Luffy, we're pretty much focusing on life since it's almost impossible to get rid of anything on the board. With this opening hand, I decided to keep it because we have a trigger for the initial ramp, and since we're going second, I can play out either of the 7-cost Robins on the 3rd turn. So if we get a 5-cost Luffy or a 4-cost Zoro, we're able to play with the Sky Island Robin. However, if not, we can just play out the EBO3. We take the first hit from the opponent and we play out the Sanji from trigger. We pitch the rifle just to end up finding a Gum Gum Giant, and we draw into the 4-cost Zoro, which is pretty good. So we just swing 5 into the leader so we can play out the Zoro right now, and then the next turn we can just play out the 7-cost Robin from EBO3 instead of the Sky Island one. I heal 1 by pitching the Gum Gum Golden Rifle, and right now our opponent has 5 Dawn, which they can play out Wiper or the 5-cost Secret Luffy. However, if they play out the Luffy, they won't be able to rush. They opted to use the Red Hawk event to KO my Zoro and then swing 6k into life, which I take. And I go ahead and swing 5k into life with leader. Since it has banners, they can either counter or take the hit. However, they give us a 2k counter, which is pretty good for us, getting rid of one of those Zeus, and play out the 7-cost Robin to heal. I don't swing with the Sanji just because I'm trying to starve a little bit my opponent here and force them to swing at our life right now. They swing 5 with the leader, and they also played out the 5-cost Rush Luffy. So right now I am debating if I should take the 5, which I do, and not trigger the Frankie, and then take the other 7, just because we are able to heal with the Borsalino that we have on the hand. However, we do get a 4-cost Zoro, which we're able to play out with the 7-cost Nico Robin that allows us to play a 5-drop or less Sky Island Straw Hat character. So I swing 7k into lead with the leader, banishing the first life of our opponent, and we just go ahead and play out the 7-cost Nico Robin, take 1 life to put it back from the top of our deck, and then play out the Zoro to heal by pitching the 6-cost banished Zoro that we had on our hand. I opted to pitch the Zoro even though it has banished, just because I want to be able to heal with the Borsalino, so I just preserve the 2k counters that I have on the hand. Right now they swing 5k with the leader. However, since they have 2 Rush Luffys, I will counter the first one and then take the other 2 hits, which we end up triggering Nami from the life, and we just go ahead and pick up a 4-cost Zoro so that we can have different options to heal later on in the turn. Right now we're at 10 Dawn, and we can either play the Borsalino, the Zoro, or the 7-drop Robin to be able to heal. And I'm thinking about just swinging 7k with the leader into our opponent's life so that we can keep burning life from our opponent. And I'm pretty much unable to swing into the Luffys if I want to starve our opponent, since with the leader effect they're able to just take a life instead of having to counter or having to KO the Luffys that they have on the board. So I swing 7 and the opponent counters out by giving the last 2 cards that they have on their hand. So right now I am debating of just poking a bit with the characters that I have on the board. So I swing 5k with the Sanji. The opponent takes and there is no trigger, and I swing another 6 with the Zoro that we have, then a 7k with the Sky Island Robin that we have. So currently I am just trying to get cards out of their hand or just keep on dropping their life, since Luffy is able to heal relatively quick because it has a lot of heal characters that are low cost, so they can play out the 4-cost Zoro, the rifle, or even the Borsalino to get to 3 life on a 10 Dawn turn. So they take the 7k from Nico Robin and then also take the 8k from the other Robin that we have. So I just go ahead and play out a Borsalino to heal 1 while preserving active Dawn for the Gum Gum Giant. Although the Luffys do get a boost in attack if I use either the Borsalino or the Gum Gum Giants, I still leave them up just in case to be able to counter out if the opponent opted to go for game. So the opponent just goes ahead and swings 5k into leader, and I'm opting to just counter with one of these Frankies just because I don't want to make the 5-cost Luffys too high in power. They swing 6k into my Sanji with the Zoro, and I am debating if I should counter or not. So I do use the Gum Gum Giant just because I'm trying to filter out my hand to get a bit more counter without having to use events. And this will boost both 5-drop Luffys that they have on the board. I am debating what I should pitch. So I just pitch the 7-cost Nico Robin just to try and get more counter in my hand. And lucky for us, they just reveal a 1-cost from the life. So the Luffys just become an AK during this turn. And they swing 8,000 into the Sanji, and I just let it go. I don't want to use another Gum Gum Giant, and even if I do, it is just going to increase the power once again. They swing 8,000 into life after KOing the Sanji. So right now I have multiple Borsalinos and also multiple Gum Gum Giants in hand, so I have quite a few options right now. I can also play the 10-drop Luffy for 9 Dawn to make myself a 7k lead. And since our opponent has 2 blockers and also 2 5-drop Luffys and a 4-cost Zoro, while having still 3 life, I am unable to go for board at this time or even go for game. So I am debating if I should just play out the Borsalino and the Zoro just to heal and get more cards in my life. And I am debating of just swinging a 5k into lead to see if my opponent would just get a free block so I can swing into the Borsalinos to get rid of some of the characters they have on the board. So I opt to swing 7k with my leader to see what the opponent does, see if they give me one of the blockers 2 cards from hand or just take a life. And they opted to give me 2 cards, 2k Zeus and also a 1k Nico Robin. So right now I am debating if I should try to keep poking and just heal. However, I do decide to just attack with the Zoro, but I'm trying to think if I should first heal with the Borsalino, although it won't really make much of a difference if I do or not. So I just went ahead and swung with the Zoro first, just in case if they got a trigger that could KO the Borsalino blocker that I was planning on playing. At least they don't get a trigger right now. I just go ahead and swing a 7k with the Nico Robin and then an 8k with the second Nico Robin. The opponent is probably thinking if they should take the life or counter, but they do take the life dropping to 0, and I just play out the Borsalino to have 2 blockers, 2 life, and 3 active Dawn for the multiple giants that I have in my hand. And I was thinking about countering with the Rayleigh, however, considering that I could play it out later on to get rid of one of the Borsalino blockers that they have, I opted to just counter with the Borsalino instead. The opponent then went ahead and swung 6k with the Zoro, which leads me to believe that they'll probably just do a rifle Zoro and Borsalino to heal 3 life. However, they went ahead and played the 1-cost Nami Searcher into the 4-cost Zoro, pitching 1 secret Luffy to heal 1 life. And they went ahead and swung 9k with the Rush Luffy into our opponent, into my leader. And I just take the hit since they're going to swing again with the second Luffy, and I can just block one of those hits instead of countering and using my events. And the opponent just gave up right now since they didn't have much counter in their hand, and we take the game. To wrap up the video, I wanted to go over the current build that I'm testing in my deck. I essentially reduced the Sky Island package and took out the secret Luffys and the 7-drop Robins. I added the 4-cost Perona and the 8-cost Gecko. I added the Perona just because I wanted something to be able to slow down Enel's game. So the Perona helps to stun the 6-cost Enels and also other characters like the Holly or any other character that they may have on the board. And the Gecko is pretty much another heal option, and also for the trigger. The trigger allows you to play out a 4-cost or less character from your trash, so you can play out Perona or even play out the Zoro to heal a life by pitching a card from the hand, which is pretty good when you're trying to survive in the late game. The Gecko is not really a character that I'm depending on healing too much, but I can just pitch it with the leader effect if I have to. Instead of pitching a 2k, I can just pitch the Gecko since it is a brick in the hand, but is mostly for the trigger and just another heal option. I am still testing this build, so nothing is really concrete right now, but I will be updating you on how it does at locals. That is all for today. I hope you enjoyed the matches along with the deck list. Let me know if you test it out and how it goes, and also feel free to subscribe to the channel as it really helps me out, and I will catch y'all in the next one.